back in. It's another episode of the Wobcast 2.0. We are off and running fast and furious, not just on this episode of the Wobcast 2.0, but in free agency. It is finally here, a long-awaited day for yours truly, Wobby, and my partner and co-host Gyles, as the new league year officially begins in the National Football League. We cast our gaze ahead to 2024 to see how the Vikings can improve. They've made one step in that direction already here in free agency, an early splash for the Minnesota Vikings. But Gyles, it's not about Kirk Cousins. It's on the other side of the ball. First of all, how you doing, and how do you feel about linebacker Jonathan Greenard?
Yeah, hey, Merry Christmas. I mean, Christmas definitely came early this year. This is my favorite day of the year. The phone just vibrates off my desk. Really excited for today, and I think really the best is yet to come. But when it comes to Jonathan Greenard, I think this is a really exciting signing. I think a lot of people will say, never heard of this guy. What are the Vikings doing? But when you really get into the stats of what he was able to do down in Houston, he had a phenomenal 2023 season. And more importantly, I think he's truly on an upward trajectory when it comes to his career. I think this is when you look at an edge rusher, an outside linebacker, this is the prime of their career. And when you look at the 2023 season, according to PFF, he had 14 sacks. I mean, 14 sacks. That is incredible. I think that is one of the most potentially underrated signings of this year's NFL free agency. If you look at that alone, he'd be the one pretty major contributor that no one's ever heard of. He had 53 sacks in the 2023 season. He had a bunch of tackles for loss. I think this guy is potentially a freight train that's about to enter Egan. And, when you look at his past performance, been pretty darn good. And he's about to step into a defense that has a pretty strong focus on pressure. So really excited to see what this guy puts on the field.
And a need in that area, Gyles. We just talked last week about our concern with this room, the pass rushing component of the Vikings defense, the edge rushers, the outside linebacker room. We were concerned about it with from a depth standpoint and from a production potentially heading out the door standpoint. Danielle Hunter may not be back. He's a free agent. Not hearing anything positive or negative about his prospects of returning. This signing may lead you to conclude that the Vikings don't think they can retain him. So even more of a concern at that point. I mean, even with Danielle Hunter back, I'm concerned about their ability to rush the passer. I don't know that he's going to be back. So Greenard is a huge signing from that standpoint. Your second best pass rusher is on the mend, coming off of an injury, trying to DJ Wanham trying to come back from an injury, and you have basically no depth after that. You have developmental prospects after that, but no one that you can feel good about plugging in. Now you do. Now, if they can also get Danielle Hunter back in the fold, they're really cooking with gas now when it comes to the pass rush. But in the event they are not, this is a good way to fill that void. And I will also say, Danielle Hunter, I think, is a premier edge rusher in this league, Gyles, and would love to have him on my team. But he's no spring chicken anymore. I mean, his days of being like the young up-and-comer, the young guy on the rise, the best young pass rusher in the NFL, those days are gone. He's one of the best pass rushers in the NFL, but he's no longer young. Jonathan Greenard is 4 years, $76 million. He's 26 years old, was a third-round pick in 2020. You went through his production, was a star on an emerging, rising defense in Houston with DeMeco Ryans as the new head coach. So if he's good enough for DeMeco Ryans and where DeMeco Ryans comes from, I think he's going to be good enough for the Vikings. So I like that the place he is on his career arc. He's young, he's rising, he's entering his prime. So that's a good signing here for the Minnesota Vikings. Now, there's still some more work to do on defense, but this is a really good start for the Vikings. And you're right. It's an underrated signing. I mean, he's not a household name, certainly in Minnesota, but maybe not even in some AFC fan bases' homes. Really not a name that people talk about, but his production is there. I'll be curious to dig into him a little bit more. Is he versatile? Can he line up on both sides? Can you kick him inside? Or is he a guy who's exclusively outside? Does he ever drop into coverage? All these things are going to be interesting to find out about him. And I'm sure that we'll hear from Vikings brass, maybe even Brian Flores himself, but certainly from Kwesi and from KOC about that. But a really fun, interesting signing. Definitely more to come for the Vikings. I also wonder if it's an indication they don't think they can bring Cousins back, because this is a big dollar amount here, $76 million over 4 years. Now they can spread that out and reduce the cap number, but this is like a tier one signing for the Vikings. Does it indicate to you one way or the other on Hunter and or Cousins?
So that's a great question. I think a couple things can be true. I think this is a big signing, and that will reduce your ability to sign other players. But also on the other end of the spectrum, we do have a bit more cap space to deal with. Not only this year, but one of the underrated things being talked about for the 2025 season is that we have like 125 million in cap space. And if you're following the NFL even a little bit, you know that most contracts are back weighted, and the idea that the front are front loaded, right? So I think you have the ability to sign today, but more importantly, push a lot of money into the future. So although I do think that Kirk Cousins' likelihood to come back to Minnesota is reduced, I still think you may have the money to afford some positions depending on what you want to prioritize. Now, for example, with the specifically the Jonathan Greenard contract, at face value, it's a 19-year or 19 per year average annual value. However, if you stick 2 void years on the end of the contract, you're down in the 12-ish range. If you knew that you were going to go into free agency and sign a edge rusher for $12 million, would you think, oh, we could also sign Daniil for, let's call it 22 to 24 a year? Would you be willing to swallow that, knowing that it was a $12 million? So honestly, there's a chance. I mean, we'll see what the contract comes out here publicly, but there's a chance they stuck 2 years on the void, void years on the end, made it technically a 6-tier contract with a $12 million average annual value. You could still sign Daniil, and imagine having this guy and Daniil. That would fix your pressure issue on both sides of the ball. There's a chance they could still be doing this. There really is. You could make those numbers work both today and tomorrow. You really could.
Good. And I hope they do, because even with Greenard, they are deficient in the pass rushing room. DJ Wanham, you don't know what you got with him. I mean, he's really, you feel better about DJ Wanham if he's your third guy, or if you have an absolute bona fide stud on the other side of him, like you had with Hunter. So Greenard and Wanham is good. But Greenard and Hunter, or Greenard and a first-round pick with Wanham as your third, is really good. That's really where you want to be. So would love to see the Vikings find a way to make it work, especially if it doesn't end up working out with Kirk Cousins. You know, that leaves you even more cap space and cash to make something work on the edge. And as we've discussed multiple times, including last week and the week prior, I would rather be sure up front in the trenches with my defensive line than I would be throwing a bunch of money at guys in the secondary. Because even if you have a bunch of big free agent signings and first round picks in the secondary, if you have no pass rush and the quarterback can stand back there for 4 or 5 ticks, it doesn't matter who you got covering. You know, you can have Deion Sanders and Ed Reed back there. It doesn't matter if the quarterback's not getting pressured. So hopefully they can find a way to get Hunter back in the fold as well, especially since it kind of feels to me like Cousins is out the door. Let's talk about that. Let's segue into Kirk Cousins. So no headlines with Cousins and the Vikings, or Cousins and any team, as of 12:18 Central Time as we're recording this episode of the Wobcast 2.0. Now, we do have quarterback news. Russell Wilson to Pittsburgh on a 1-year veteran minimum deal, as the Broncos pay $38.5 million of his salary for not playing there. The Steelers pay him $1.2 million. Great deal for Pittsburgh, I think. Baker Mayfield re-signs with Tampa Bay. Mac Jones traded to the Jags. That's really it for big headlines. Nothing with Cousins. So let's assess the chances here, the likelihood of Cousins coming back, and let's take a look at the market. I've got some numbers that we can go over as well. I feel like Cousins is out the door. I feel like Atlanta's the most likely landing spot. I think Minnesota's in the mix, but I feel like there's a sneaky third team in there, Gyles, and I don't know who it is. Washington, New England, Denver, Vegas, it's someone. We're talking about arguably the greatest negotiating player agent in NFL history with Kirk Cousins and his agent. I think his name is Mike McCartney. There has to be another team in the mix. It can't just be the Vikings and the Falcons. I have to believe there's someone else in the mix. So tell me a little bit what you're feeling. All along, you've kind of felt like he was out, that he was not coming back. I want to know how you're feeling now as the negotiating window has officially opened.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because I think the paradigm shift has happened here. The status quo is a little bit in shift, because going into the offseason, or going into free agency specifically, I think Kirk Cousins decided, hey, I'm going to go test free agency because the Vikings are not giving me what I would prefer. I want, at least as a floor, a 2-year fully guaranteed contract, if not more. And the Vikings said our ceiling is a 1-year fully guaranteed contract, right? And I think they were both flexible on the money, but when it came to the guarantees, there was a misalignment enough to make him go hit free agency. Now, I think in that posture, I think it became clear that the Falcons became the number one kind of target for the Cousins camp, and for the Falcons camp, Cousins was the number one priority as well, right? So both sides seemingly had mutual level interest. However, in that process, I think that may have backfired on Kirk, if we're being completely honest with ourselves, because him committing to going to free agency all but said to the Vikings, nope, we're not going to be able to make this work. Goodbye. Right. That he had the opportunity to say, let's find a way to make this work as of last night. He chose not to do so. However, in doing so, that said a word to the Falcons saying, oh, he's no longer going to Minnesota. We now have leverage. And I think they have now brought their offer down, if we're being completely honest. And I think there's a chance that that could trigger Kirk to go to a different team. And this is purely speculative, but I think it's 12:20 Central Time here on Monday morning, or Monday afternoon rather. And the fact that a deal has not been done with the Atlanta Falcons should tell the world that they have now tried to out leverage Kirk, which, like you mentioned, Kirk is a brilliant negotiator, at least Mike McCartney is. So I think there's a chance that they've now gone to try to go really pursue another possible deal with, let's say, the Patriots or the Commanders. Ironically, both have top 5 picks. So I think there's a lot of inner workings happening behind the scenes, because had this all fallen the way that it was supposed to 24 hours ago, I think the Falcons deal would already be done. But I think the Falcons said, oh, we have leverage now. We're now going to try to lower the offer. I really do.
Okay. So let's just do average annual value, and let's assess the landscape in the market. So Wilson is essentially, if you add up what the Broncos are paying him and what the Steelers are paying him, he's just under 40 mil. Mayfield's 33.3 mil. So would we agree he's above that? Both those guys, I would say for sure. He's above Wilson. Okay. So up after Wilson at 39 is Prescott at 40. Daniel Jones at 40, Matthew Stafford at 40, Josh Allen at 43, Mahomes at 45. So I don't think he's better than Mahomes or Allen, obviously, but I think this is where he's looking to get paid from him an average annual value standpoint. Others would say it's going to be in the 50s, that he's going to reset the market or push the upper limits of the market because he's Kirk Cousins and everyone needs a quarterback and he's great at negotiating. I mean, Burrow is 55, Herbert is 52 and a half, Lamar is 52, and Jalen Hurts is 51. That's your top 4. I mean, do you think that that's what he's asking for? That he's up there at the $50 million range for average annual value?
I do think it depends on the amount of guarantees in place, because that definitely factors into what teams are willing to give or give up on. Like, hey, if you're willing to do this, I'll do this, right? And to be honest, I think Kirk is far more focused on guarantees than he is average annual value. You tell me if that's the wrong read here, but I think the guarantees is 1A and then the money is 1B. So if he has to prioritize one over the other, it's a guarantee versus the other. So if he's able to get a fully guaranteed contract, I'd be willing to see this in the 40 to 45 range. However, if he's not given a guaranteed contract, which per our last discussion, I think there may be some potential collusion among owners that does not want to give up fully guaranteed contracts, I absolutely think that's what he's looking for an average annual value. 100%.
So what you're saying is it doesn't matter to him that he's number 2 or 3 or whatever for average annual value. What matters to him is that he's going to get what he negotiates for, and it's going to be guaranteed. So he would be willing to come in at 43 or 5 or 47 instead of 52 or 53 if it's guaranteed. Okay. I think you're probably right about that. I don't think he's a big status among my peers guy. I think he's like, what am I going to get guy? I want to take care of me and family and all that. I agree with that. Here's the other thing with Cousins that I wanted to get to, and you mentioned it a couple of minutes ago. Let's say whether you want Cousins back or not as a Vikings fan, let's say he's not back. And it is Atlanta, it is Washington, or it's New England. The silver lining in that is most likely that takes a team who is ahead of you in the draft out of the mix of taking a quarterback ahead of you, right? And even if you're the Vikings and you get Cousins back, I think you should really spend that first round, think about spending that first round pick on a quarterback. So if Cousins doesn't come back to Minnesota and he goes to Atlanta, Washington, or New England, the good news there is it makes it more likely that you're going to get a quarterback at 11, or that you're not going to have to get as far to move up. You don't have to go as far to get that quarterback. Now, if you look at who's ahead of the Vikings, at 1 and 9 is Chicago. They're in the quarterback market. Agreed?
Mm-hmm.
At 2 is Washington. They're in, right?
Yep.
Okay. At 3 is New England. They're in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think the Giants are in? They're at 6.
I do. I actually really do. And I think that's a sneaky thing that no one's talking about.
Yep. Do you think Atlanta is in? They're at 8.
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, that's at least 4 teams. And that's not even assessing the market of teams that are behind the Vikings who would come up, who would trade up and compete with you to trade up. So it's at least 4. Chicago, Washington, New England, and the Giants. And then Atlanta would be 5. So if Cousins goes to one of those teams, you're reducing it down to 4. Now, I think everyone agrees that there are 4 quarterbacks who are going to go in the first round.
Yep.
So you're at the limit. Even with Cousins gone, you're at the limit. So the Vikings probably, to get a quarterback, they're probably going to have to trade up.
So I'm hearing very slight rumblings. So
yes,
let me preface this by saying very slight, but there are rumblings that you missed one team in that list that is interested in a quarterback.
Not the Jets.
Not the Jets.
Arizona?
Nope.
Chargers? No way.
The Chargers.
What?
So let's just play a little game here. Who did the Chargers sign as head coach this past offseason?
Jim Harbaugh.
Okay, where did Jim Harbaugh come from?
Michigan.
And who was the quarterback under center for Michigan last season when they may or may not have won the championship?
J.J. McCarthy.
Yep. Would you ever, as the Chargers, trade away Herbert, who is proven to have not got it done, regardless of your opinion of him, he hasn't gotten the job done. You could make an argument that Kirk Cousins and Justin Herbert are in the same category because they have not gotten it done. They've missed playoffs tremendously. Yep. If you're the Chargers, do you trade him away for a complete haul and go get J.J. McCarthy at 5?
I wouldn't do that.
And in that scenario, would you grab Justin Herbert as the Minnesota Vikings?
Oh yeah, I would give whatever it takes. I would pay for Justin Herbert. Whatever
I would too.
Yeah,
I would
whatever.
Too.
I mean,
and you would have to pay.
He is on a list of maybe 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the NFL who I would say this about. Oh, he's available? Okay, what's the cost? Oh, that's what it is? Here you go. Yes. Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, and Herbert, probably.
Let's play that out a little bit. Would you
Stroud,
give up
maybe
pick number 11 and Justin Jefferson to get Herbert?
Yep. Would you?
I'd have to think about it, but I would be leaning towards yes. The only reason I would question it or to have to think about it is the fact that he does have a $50 million price tag. Like, he is expensive already. So you've lost the ability to get a rookie scale contract for your Super Bowl window. But I do believe he is an elevator. I think if I'm evaluating the Chargers franchise, I think they have misused that entire franchise. They've had one of the most talented rosters in the NFL. And I think coaching has ultimately what tanked them. Now, it's just whether or not Jim Harbaugh agrees with that, because he has come out and said that he believes J.J. McCarthy is the best quarterback in this draft, which could be a homer mentality, to be very clear. But I think there is still some rumblings going on that could happen here with the Chargers, and that should affect your roster construction.
So all of that, what you said makes sense. Now, what I will say is what Jim Harbaugh says about J.J. McCarthy, as it relates to where he should be drafted, to me doesn't matter. It in terms of like reading the tea leaves of what's like predicting what's going to happen. His evaluation of JJ McCarthy is gold because he was with him for X number of years. I mean, he knows him as a player better than anyone else on planet Earth.
Yep. And won a championship with him.
Yeah. So his true evaluation of JJ McCarthy is good as gold, but his public comments you have to take with a grain of salt, because he has, no matter what he wants to do with Herbert and McCarthy, he has his only incentive for him is to pump JJ McCarthy up.
That's fair.
Because if he's really trying to get him and take him, he's got to justify it. So he's going to pump him up, inflate his value, pump him up, right? Yep. He's already way up there in the draft order, so he doesn't have to worry about inflating him too much that he's going to miss out on him. He's already up there to get him. Yep. So if he wants him, he has to speak glowingly about him. to justify why he's taking him. If he doesn't want him, he needs to speak glowingly about him so that other teams have to think about taking him so that the player he wants is there and falls to
that's
him,
fair.
Right?
Yeah.
So he has no reason to say anything but good things about J.J. McCarthy. Now, all of that being said, you couldn't help but excuse Jim Harbaugh for wanting J.J. McCarthy. I mean, he knows him. He won a title with him. Like, the whole thing is there. The continuity is there, right? Now, you have to think that part of why he took the Chargers job was because he liked the quarterback. I would think that. Although he could have said, he could have said, I don't love him, but the Chargers are, what are they, third? They're picking third?
Fifth,
but they're picking
number 5,
fifth. So even though I don't love the quarterback there, we're picking fifth, so I know I can get a quarterback I like. He could have been saying that, but I have a feeling he likes Herbert.
Yep. I mean, I would love him, to be very clear. But it just kind of depends on what side of that fence you look on, what type of system you're looking to play in. Does the quarterback fit into that? Because I look at Sean Payton as a great quarterback, or a great coach. And I think a lot of people look at Russell Wilson as a generational great quarterback, and that resulted in a dumpster fire, right? So if you don't have absolute alignment between your coach and quarterback, obviously things go awry. So it'll be very interesting to see what the Chargers do. Now, I guess we'll have to see. That doesn't have to be the top priority for this offseason, but I think there's a chance that the Chargers fall into the quarterback mix come draft time.
That would be nuts, man. McCarthy's a tricky one, man. J.J. McCarthy's tricky. I mean, all he did is win at Michigan. So if he comes into the NFL and all he does is win, you're going to be like, duh. I mean, we saw it. It was like, it was just so obvious, right? But I think if you just watch games and watch them, you don't think that he's franchise caliber material. I don't think you do.
You could make a similar but different evaluation between him and Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence, all he did was win. And although I don't think he's a dumpster fire, I think he has lost more games than he's won so far in the NFL. So, like, you can't just look at wins as the absolute evaluation for a college quarterback, right? You got to look at their mechanics and does that fit into your scheme and your style? And I think there's some teams that he would thrive with, and there's other teams that he would fail with, right? I think Mac Jones going into the NFL was a decent quarterback, but he was far more fragile than I think that should have been given credit for in the Patriots organization. And I think they ruined him for a short season. I think he would have done far better in a 49ers style offense, right? So all that to say, I think different people work in different places, and I think that'll have to be ultimately up to Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers franchise on who fits best where, right? But ultimately, I think when it comes back to Cousins coming back to Minnesota, I think the only way that happens right now is if he realizes, I out-levered myself unintentionally. The Falcons have now dropped their price. If I'm going to get the same price, I just want to go back to where I'm comfortable.
You're right. If we're in the ballpark. So one note I have on my prep for today is no discount for Min, meaning Cousins is not going to give the Vikings a discount just because he used to play for the Vikings. When it comes to like what I want for money. However, I do think the familiarity that he has with the Vikings, the fact Jefferson is there and the fact that he works well with Kevin O'Connell is a tiebreaker in the Vikings' favor if all things are equal. Yes. That's what you're saying, right? Okay. So the door is not shut on Cousins coming back. The old saying in baseball, tie goes to the runner, which is, by the way, not true. Tie goes to the defense because the rule book says the runner has to beat the throw to first base, but whatever. That's inside baseball. Tie goes to the Vikings in the Kirk Cousins sweepstakes, I believe. Tie goes to the Vikings. So the Vikings just have to be as good as other teams when it comes to that offer because Cousins is probably going to choose to come back to Minnesota for the reasons we mentioned. The Chargers being in the quarterback market is interesting to me. That would make Herbert available, and that would be one of the best quarterbacks of all time to become available, right? I mean,
oh my goodness,
nuts.
yes.
That would be nuts.
I'll take that all day long.
Me too. Just saw that Christian Wilkins agreed to terms with the Raiders, so that's a bummer.
Yep. For $27 million a year.
Yikes, man.
Woof.
Yikes. Yeah. All right. So that's where we're at with Greenard and Cousins when it comes to the Vikings. More news to come certainly this week when it comes to the Vikings and free agency, and we'll be able to talk about it tomorrow and on any other episodes we record this week, which we will record at least one more. We'll also be dropping an episode of the Wobcast 2.0 where we review the wide receiver performance from 2023 and lay out a plan to improve that for 2024. Before we go, Gyles, I want to give us a chance to empty out our notebook, so let me know if you got anything else. But some headlines in free agency that stood out to me. Wilson to the Steelers, 1 year, $1.2 million. Love the signing for them. As much as I liked and tried to give Kenny Pickett a chance, I don't like what I've seen the first couple of seasons with him. So I love that they went and got Wilson for $1.2 million while the Broncos pay 99% or 98% of that contract. Baker Mayfield back with the Bucs. Wide receiver T. Higgins requests a trade, Gyles. Interesting. The Broncos cut Justin Simmons, awesome safety, leader in interceptions in the NFL since 2016, by the way. Mac Jones traded to the Jags. The Jags also signed center Mitch Morse. The Niners to release defensive tackle Eric Armstead after being unable to reach an agreement with him. The Lions re-signed Graham Glasgow. The Patriots re-signed wide receiver Kendrick Bourne. And last, Green Bay set to release inside linebacker Devondre Campbell.
Yep.
Kind of interested in that. And there's some Packers ties on the Vikings staff.
And they're releasing Bakhtiari today as well, the left tackle.
I did see that right before we started recording. I mean, he's going to the Jets, right?
I would venture to say so.
Yeah.
It has to happen.
So,
and then Tony Pollard, if you didn't mention that, signed with the Tennessee Titans today.
He did?
Yep, for 3 years, $24 million, which is so interesting on the Titans' perspective that you would move on from Derrick Henry and then just go sign Tony Pollard. That's interesting.
Wow.
Obviously, DeAndre Swift to the Bears, Gabe Davis to the Jaguars. That's an interesting signing. I will say our boy Ezra Cleveland re-signed with the Jaguars for 3 years, $28.5 million. So good for him. Definitely got signed. Bummer for Christian Wilkins. Still no Danielle Hunter news. Hopefully we can get him back in Egan. That'd be interesting. But yeah, interesting day so far. A lot more to come.
There is a lot more to come, and we'll be back tomorrow for another episode of the Wobcast 2.0. There will certainly be headlines to digest and discuss at that point. I think for now, though, that's it. In conclusion, we're excited about Greenard. We're nervous / sad because it seems like Hunter won't be back, but we're hopeful and wanting him to be back. We still think Cousins is out the door, although we think there's another team in the mix and that Atlanta not having a deal already in place is not good for them. And there are juicy, fat names out there that would be awesome to see in purple, like T. Higgins, Justin Simmons, Devondre Campbell. There's one other one. We talked about Derrick Henry. There's one other one that you mentioned. which I can't recall right now. But you remember
Justin Herbert.
That would be an interesting one. Remember we recklessly speculated, to steal a term from our friends at Score North. We recklessly speculated Derrick Henry to the Vikings a few weeks ago. Do you remember that?
I did remember that. That's still on the board here, and the Vikings need some pretty big help at the running back one position.
Yeah. Hey, where do you think Justin Fields is going?
See, I would have guessed the Steelers, to be honest, up until this point. So I think they may have boxed themselves into a corner not getting a deal done this far. I mean, maybe he sits behind whatever quarterback they draft as quarterback 2 or the other way around. But I don't know, where else would he go? I feel like you have some news. Go for it.
So the COO of my company is in Atlanta. He's based in Atlanta. He's a big football guy. He says Justin Fields to the Ravens as their backup to Lamar Jackson.
Oh,
now
I can see that.
I think Fields wants to be a starter, and I think like he's probably one of the 32 best quarterbacks in the league, so he should start somewhere. But it's not always the best 32 who get starting jobs. Sometimes there's a Gardner Minshew who's a backup somewhere, right? I mean, you talk about a guy who would be a perfect backup for Baltimore. High level, can execute the offense very similarly to Lamar. Wouldn't that be a great fit?
Yep, even to learn under that tutelage, because clearly they built a system for that works. I mean, they really should have went to the Super Bowl, if we're being honest. That'd be a perfect fit for him. Completely agree.
Yeah. So we'll see where he goes. I mean, the Vikings you'd have to throw in as a possibility if Cousins isn't back because they wouldn't have an incumbent starter then. But I do think that whether it's tomorrow when we record, Gyles, or later in the week, we should probably go through a power rankings of who you want to be the Vikings starting quarterback. With the pre-qualifier that they draft one. They're going to draft one. We don't know what round. In the event they need a starter who's not their draft pick, let's power rank who they could be. Obviously, Wilson and Mayfield now are off that list, but there's a big group to wade through there. And I'm not saying they're all great options that are going to sell tickets, but there are some that are more viable than others. And there's a couple that I would actually genuinely say, even with these guys, you're a contender in the North. So we'll go through that list the next time we record, maybe tomorrow. But something for everyone to think about, including you and me for the next recording. For now, I think we're done for now. I think that's it. We got to let some headlines happen so we can react to them tomorrow. You good with that?
Let's do it.
All right. Thanks, Gyles. Have a good rest of the day. We'll talk to you tomorrow. All right, partner?
All right, rock and roll. See you soon.
All righty. That's it for this episode of the Wobcast 2.0. Thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, and follow the Wobcast 2.0, YouTube, Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, all the other places where you find your favorite football content. Come and find us as well if you haven't already. Once you do, we'll see you there. On behalf of Gyles, this is Wobby signing off for now. Until next time, enjoy free agency and Skol Vikings.